Support for this episode comes from Dexcom. Diabetes doesn't always have to interrupt your day. Dexcom G7, a continuous glucose monitoring system, sends your glucose numbers to your phone or receiver. Know where you are and where you're heading without finger sticks and without interruptions. Dexcom G7 is the most accurate CGM, and Medicare patients on all types of insulin are now covered for it. Learn more, get a free benefits check to see if you qualify. Even if you don't have CGM coverage, you can take advantage of the Pharmacy Savings Program. Find out more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Today on Diabetes Connections, Type 2. Metformin is probably the most prescribed diabetes drug. Well, what exactly is it? How does it work? We're going to talk about it. My guest this week is professional golfer Ken Duke. You may have seen him win on the Champions Tour this summer. You may not know he lives with diabetes. He shares how he was diagnosed, how he manages on the tour and on the golf course, and I asked him to give us amateurs some advice. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Hello and welcome to Diabetes Connections Type 2. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. I am also the host of another podcast all about Type 1 called simply Diabetes Connections. After 8 years and more than 600 episodes of that show, I decided we needed something like that for the Type 2 community. So welcome. I spent 20 plus years working in local news, so I'm not here to lecture or nag or pretend to be a doctor. I want to share information and inspiration. So let's jump right in with a minute of diabetes facts. This week, I want to talk about Metformin. A lot of doctors call this pill the first line of defense for people with diabetes. It is very widely prescribed. It's considered safe, effective, and affordable. Metformin is part of the class of drugs called biguanides, which inhibit the production of glucose in the liver. Metformin also lowers blood sugar by increasing your body's sensitivity to insulin and decreases the amount of glucose that our bodies absorb from whatever foods we eat. It's not a quick fix. It is not insulin. Most people need to take metformin as part of making diet and exercise changes as well. Now, there are some side effects in some people, especially at first. Most reported are nausea and what they call gastric distress, stomach pain, gas, bloating, diarrhea. So a lot of doctors recommend you start small and then build to a larger dose. It can take more time that way to see changes, but it's probably better for your stomach. There's also an extended release version that many people say helps. Metformin can also increase the risk of hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. That's a risk for people usually who take insulin, drink a lot of alcohol, or take medications which increase insulin secretion, usually a class of drugs called sulfonylureas. That is definitely an ask your doctor type of question. So as always, I'm going to link more up in the show notes. And a lot of this information you just heard about metformin came from a great article at DiaTribe, which I will link up as well. Up next, my guest, Ken Duke, a professional golfer. Golf Digest called him the consummate grinder. He won on the PGA Tour in 2013 and now plays on the Champions Tour, where he won this past August in the Shaw Charity Classic. It was his 100th start. Ken Duke was diagnosed with type 2 a few years ago. He's going to talk about his diagnosis, how it changed his life on tour, what he has to do now for management, and what advice he has for us, and a lot more right after this. I went to a diabetes conference earlier this year, and I saw something I knew I needed to tell you about. It's called CeQur Simplicity, and it's a game changer in insulin delivery. It's like a wearable insulin pen, a patch that's water-resistant, thin, and lightweight. Best of all, it seamlessly fits into your lifestyle. For many of you, remembering your supplies or the hassle of injections is a daily challenge. Now, you can say goodbye to mealtime injections. With CeQur Simplicity, you only fill what you need for 3 days, and it can be worn discreetly under your clothing, making dosing a breeze. If you're on long-acting insulin, you'll still take that shot once a day, but your mealtime insulin will always be with you. Find out more, go to clickinsulin.com. That is clickinsulin.com. Ken, welcome to Diabetes Connections Type 2. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, excited about it, yeah.
Where are you today? You're playing, right?
Yes, I'm playing on the PGA Tour Champions Tour. We're up in Cary, North Carolina, at a golf course called Prestonwood.
Let's just jump right in and talk about your diagnosis. Can you walk me through what happened? How did you know something was wrong?
Yeah, I was out playing on the PGA Tour Champions in 2019, and all of a sudden I started losing about, a bunch of weight and muscle, and I was about 225, which is kind of heavy for me, but next thing you know, I was about 200. Now it's like 190, and then I started not having much muscle at all. Then I was hitting a bunch of bad shots and just everything that goes with it, and I told my caddy, something's got to be wrong here. Then my face just looked really skinny, and I called my wife and said, make me a doctor's appointment. I feel like something's wrong here. I don't know what it is. So we went back to Florida and got checked out, and he checked my diabetes for diabetes, and my A1C was off the chart. My number was like 400. I was losing all the good cells. So I was losing weight. I was losing muscle, and I had no strength, just feeling groggy all the time. And so immediately he put me on insulin, and 6 months later, I kind of got back in the muscle and got back in the swing of things. Now I'm just taking Metformin. So it was a scary, scary moment, and just didn't know what was going on.
I don't want to get too personal, Ken, but that's kind of an unusual type 2 diagnosis. Losing weight like that is usually associated with type 1. Did they talk to you about all of that at the time?
They did, and they thought at that time that I was a type 1, but it just came on late in my life. I never had high blood sugar ever. So just losing all that weight at that time, he diagnosed me as type 2 at the time, and after I got off the insulin is kind of when they went that direction.
So you're not taking any exogenous insulin, right? You're just taking Metformin.
Yeah, just Metformin, 1,000 milligrams a day. That's it.
So how long did it take you to kind of get back? That sounds like it was a tough diagnosis. You'd lost all that weight. Like you said, you felt like garbage. How long did it take you to get back to playing?
Yeah, I mean, I still played through it, but I was just so weak. But with that, taking that insulin, I was, obviously I went to the extreme because I'm just that person. When you're diagnosed with something or you need to practice more or whatever, you just make that adjustment, and just very disciplined when it comes to some of that stuff. And it probably took 6 months or 8 months just to kind of get some weight back on me and get some muscle back on me, and just scary. I just hated that pricking my finger 3 times a day, checking my blood sugar. I'm like, what the heck is this? So it just kind of got old, but I really just went to the extreme and watched my diet. And I think obviously I'm exercising 6 or 7 days a week, which that wasn't an issue, but really more than anything, I just had to watch my diet. And that's kind of made the big change.
You mentioned pricking your finger. You have switched to wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Did you get that pretty quickly, or did that take some time?
It took a little time after I kind of got it under control. Then the Freestyle Libre 1 came out, and I started wearing that. Then the 2 came out, and then he put me on that. Then now I'm with the 3, Freestyle Libre 3 with Abbott. So it's a really small device, and it's just amazing because I can look at my phone anytime and see where I'm at. I mean, I just looked at it before you called, and I was at 102, which was great. So yeah, it's a life changing. There's a few guys out on our tour that has type 1 and type 2, and they're always checking their glucose when they're out there, and I am as well, just to make sure you don't get too low, too high.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious. A lot of people, when they get a CGM like that, you used to have to scan it with the Libre. I know you don't have to anymore. But did you scan it or look at it like a million times a day at first?
Yeah, I was just scared to death. And that's kind of like looking. If I don't do the stock market, but like looking at a stock. You look at it like 48 times a day. And I'm doing the same thing. I only changed 1 point. So quit looking at it so much. And I just after about 2 months, I decided, well, I'll just look at it like a couple times a day just to check and see where it is.
When you're competing, you're in these high stress situations. How do you manage diabetes? You said, you don't want to go too low. You're checking it. Is it really just a question of preparing and maintaining? I mean, do you see wide fluctuations when you're playing from the stress and the adrenaline?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think that's just my job, but my doctor wanted me to get, make sure it's a little higher before I go out, just where I won't be too low going out there. So I always have some kind of snacks with me, some kind of Nutri-Grain bar, if I need something after 9 holes or whatever. But when it comes to the stress part, I think it is high sometimes, but it's low sometimes. But that's just what we do. We've challenged ourselves and contained ourselves to deal with it. I've never really, in a pressure situation, felt like I was so nervous or so shaky for my diabetes that nothing was going to happen. It's just one of those things.
It's funny to hear you say it's your job. Obviously, for people who are watching, it doesn't, it doesn't seem like that. It just seems like, right, you'd be competing and everything would be, the adrenaline would be spiking, but that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever had a low when you're practicing or competing? Have you ever had a low blood sugar?
Not really. I've always been more high than any.
Yeah.
I think a couple of times it's gotten down to maybe 80 or something, but that's over 5 years, 6 years now. So more than any, it's always been higher, and I've always had to watch my diet. I think my mom got diagnosed with diabetes late in her life too, so I guess that's where it comes from. So I just have to watch what I do.
Great. Let me ask you a couple of golf questions if I could. I have a couple of friends with kids who are trying to make a go of professional golf. One just graduated from college. He went on a golf scholarship. The other one he's just 16 years old, but he's a top ranked player in North Carolina. I'm curious if you could kind of take us back to what it was like in those early days, the stress of qualifying and then, needing to play well to make a living. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I have a daughter that's a beach volleyball player, and it's kind of her making the transition from high school to college now. So it's just one of those things. It's how quick you can make it and believing in yourself. And, for me, I didn't grow up with a lot, so it was a struggle all the time. And you see a lot of people could go to these tournaments and that tournament, and I couldn't do that. But I wasn't a member of a country club. I just went out to a field and hit balls just shag balls out into a field, and that's how I practiced. But I think you make it your own. If you want it bad enough, you can do it. And obviously it wasn't handed to me, and a lot of people, it's not handed to them either, but it's a lot of pressure, and some people can handle it, some people can't. But a lot of it is how comfortable you are where you're playing. There's a lot of friends of mine. I grew up in Arkansas. They're very comfortable playing there, but they their game couldn't travel to another state, to another condition, and they never made it. And there's a lot more to it than just the golf. You got to learn to travel. You got to learn to rest yourself. You can't just beat balls 6 or 8 hours a day. Then you got to be rested. You got to be rested when it comes to all this stuff, and just really just go back to the basics of, hey, I'm just out here with my buddies playing, and just have fun with it. A lot of people put too much stress on themselves. You got to hit a perfect shot, and in 18 holes, you might hit 1 or 2 perfect shots. You can't hit 72 of them. And a lot of people think you can do that, and they get frustrated with it, and it just messes with their mind. So you have to accept the good with the bad, and you have to go on and stay positive and play your game. I can't play Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson's game. I have to play my game, and that's the biggest part of it. You can't get caught up where you are and who you're playing with. You just have to stay in the moment and enjoy the ride and do what you have to do. That's
great. I do have to ask, though, how did you decide you wanted to play golf? How did golf come into your life?
Yeah, I was just a golfer. I played all a bunch of sports, baseball, football, basketball. But when I was 15, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. So, I was really 13. But when I was 15, I had to have back surgery because the curve in my back was getting really bad, and it was pushing into my lungs. So my doctor said, you have to have surgery when I was a sophomore in high school in February. And so I have a steel rod in my back, a 16-inch steel rod. So now I'm just thinking I don't really care about sports. I want it just to have my life,
Right.
But, I couldn't do baseball, football, basketball because I couldn't condition as much as ways some of those kids do. But I thought I could play golf. And obviously with the twisting and turning of my back, it was going to be difficult, but I thought I could do it. And plus, golf is a sport that you can play with friends or without friends. And you can play for your whole life. And it's a sport that you can just enjoy, just getting away from the everyday grind of the job or any job that you have. But just pushed forward and kept going and just kind of got better here and there and got a few breaks here and there. And so I think I can do this. And, 30 years later as a professional, here we are.
Yeah, no doubt. What's the biggest difference playing on the senior tour? I mean, obviously the age, the players are older, but I mean, it's still super competitive. It's still golf at an incredibly high level. I got a question from a listener who wanted me to ask that from you. Like, what is the biggest difference you've found playing on the senior tour? Let's be honest, managing diabetes takes time, but ordering supplies should be simple. That's why I'm so excited to partner with US Med for this podcast. US Med stands out with their unwavering dedication to your health and well-being. They proudly hold the #1 spot as the distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide, ensuring you have access to cutting-edge diabetes management. I love that they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast free shipping. And they accept Medicare nationwide and collaborate with over 800 private insurers. US Med is your trusted partner in diabetes care. Visit usmed.com/Stacey. That's usmed.com/STACEY.
Well, obviously, you're still playing with the best of the best. I mean, they're just a little older, just like we all are. They've won many majors and Ryder Cups, and it's just great to be out there. It's a little more laid back compared to the PGA Tour. It's not as a big job as the PGA Tour as it is on the Champions Tour. But I think the biggest for me is it's just 3 days. Sure, we do have some majors that are 4 days, but most of our tournaments are just 3 days. And if you're not a quick starter, you're behind the 8 ball after the first day. You know, there's always somebody shooting 6 or 7 under par, and if you shoot even par, you're behind. It's just very difficult to catch up. But it's just more laid back and fun. And I've told a few people it's like an exhibition. You know, these guys are out there. A few of us are still making a living, but a lot of these guys are out there having fun and just like an exhibition. You know, just still playing the game at 60 years old. They're just great, bunch of great guys.
That's great. All right, I have a specific question to ask, and you may laugh at me, but this really piqued my interest. So obviously, you won on the PGA Tour in the Travelers Championship in 2013. You won this summer at the Shaw Charity Classic. I mean, we watched that live. You know, it was so much fun to see. It was great. But I heard you say after that you had the exact same distance in both wins to the final hole. Is that true? And when did you realize that?
Yeah, I mean, you remember the good things, I think, and you forget the bad things. But when I was at Hartford, I had a 2-hole playoff, and the last shot I hit a foot. It was 105 yards into the hole, and just so happened that we laid it up in Calgary. And in my case, you got 105 to the hole. You get, I think it was like 98 to clear the front. And so I'm thinking, man. And I just told him, I said, dude, this is the same yardage I had at Hartford. It wasn't my same caddy, but you remember that. I remember how close I hit it. And when it left the club, I think I said it'd be good. And the wind picked up just a little bit, and I was shocked that the ball, you know, spun back as far as I did because I thought that I hit it exactly where I needed to hit it, and it was going to be a foot like it was at Hartford. But it turned out to be perfect. But, again, you remember the good things and you forget the bad things when it comes to shots like that.
That's incredible, though, and I just want to bet with my husband because he said that there's no way you thought about that in the moment, that you had to measure it afterwards or somebody told you. And I said, no, I bet he remembered it because you remember. I mean, yeah. I'm a very much an amateur, like, weekend player, and I have shots I hit 10 years ago that I remember.
Yeah, I mean, even when he told me when I was in the fairway, he said it's 105. I said, man, I had this shot at Hartford, same exact number. And he said, dude, just trust your game, trust your swing, and there you go. So it turned out to be great.
You know, and congratulations. I mean, it really was so much fun to watch. And I'm sure, you know, I spoke about being an amateur, very much an amateur there. I'm sure you play in a lot of pro-ams with a lot of AMs, you know, amateurs who love the game, but maybe are not the best. What is something that you think an everyday golfer can do to improve their game and have more fun?
Most everyday golfers do not practice. They don't practice because they don't have time. Yeah. You know, with the work schedule they have, sometimes they just have a chance to go play, and they never really practice their short game, or, you know, they want to just go hit the driver here and there. But that's what you see more than any when you're out there playing. Sure, we play 2 or 3 practice pro-ams every week, and we see it all the time. But a lot of times when you're out there playing, they don't take enough club to get to the hole. Their putts are, you know, you might say it's uphill and they'll think it's downhill, and it just, there's no feel when it comes to that. But that's just golf. That's just, you know, again, I can't play theirs and they can't play mine. And obviously everybody wants to play, you know, the best golf they can. They see the best golfers on tour and try to do that and buy the equipment that they play. But sometimes you got to do a little bit more than just go out there and play.
I know you travel a lot, and you mentioned that mostly you're focusing on eating well. That's really hard to do on the road. Can you talk a little bit about how you do it? It's okay if you don't do it perfectly, Ken. I'm just curious if you might, you know, share some either things that work for you or just kind of how you try to manage the dietary part of diabetes.
Yeah, and it's different. I mean, it's just tough for anyone traveling, you know, not just somebody that has diabetes, but, you know, just you don't know what they're cooking. You try to order a lot of vegetables. I do, and I do a lot of chicken and fish, and I do steak maybe twice a month, maybe, but more just I mean, I'm not perfect on it, but I think you know what's going to spike your blood sugar, and you know what's not, and you have to be disciplined with it. And if you're not going to be disciplined, it's going to catch up with you. So you just have to order what works for you. And like I said, I do a lot of chicken and fish and vegetables and some fruit here and there, and Nutri-Grain bars when I'm out on the golf course. That just gives me some protein, and just kind of watch my carbs too. It's not just all the sugar. You got to watch your carbs as well.
Did getting the CGM, does the Libre help you in terms of food choices? Do you see what spikes you, or is it mostly there just, to look at your numbers overall?
Well, when I first got it, I played with it. I would eat something and I'd wait for an hour and see if it spiked, not. Then I can say, well, I can eat that or I can't eat that, which I think that's a great way to figure it out. It wasn't going to kill me at the time, but it was just one of those things that I wanted to, you can read all the stuff, but sometimes people's bodies are different. And I just wanted to see if it would or not, but it definitely helps. If you eat something that you shouldn't, it's going to spike up. And it's just great when you do eat a lot of stuff, a lot of vegetables that, just keeps it all the same number. You mentioned your daughter. I'm curious what your family's reaction when you were diagnosed was, and, how it's affected kind of, what you eat together, the time you spend together, her athleticism, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. My whole family knows about my back. So that's when my kids were younger. I mean, that's one thing that we were making sure they were checked and make sure that it didn't catch our generation as well. And luckily we haven't. But then obviously with the diabetes too, we've talked to them about, watching this and that. But our kids they've been travel since they were 6 weeks old. So they kind of know, the foods and everything. But luckily so far nothing's popped up. But I think it's just like anyone else. I mean, things pop up, and you just have to watch what you do and spread the word, and just be disciplined. It's a lot of things that a lot of people are not just disciplined, and they just do what they want to do. I've lost some friends that has diabetes that they just did what they wanted to do, and then we lost them. So it's just up to you. It's not up to anyone else. You mentioned your daughter is a very high level volleyball player. I don't know about your other children, but as a professional athlete yourself, is it hard to, watch your kids play at that level? And are you the kind of dad that really wants to get involved and tell them like, do this or handle it that way? Or is it easy for you to step back and kind of let them go? No, I'm different when it comes to that. I've seen a lot of parents that's involved too much. And I think, you talked about some of your friends are trying to play for a living, or, younger golfers. You just have to, you gotta let them figure it out. You can't control what they do. You just have to let them figure it out for themselves, because that's just the way the golf game is. But I have two daughters, and one's a sorority girl, which she's not an athlete, but my youngest is a flat athlete. And she's always said, Dad, why didn't you push me in golf? And I said, well, because you're not a disciplined player. I mean, you're not a disciplined person. You're an aggressive player, and you're not a person that has patience. You're aggressive, and that's why you do well in soccer and you did well in volleyball. And she said, okay, I understand that now. But it's just great between her and I, our relationships. We watch film together and we talk about strategies. And, she asks me all the time, how do you deal with this and how do you deal with that? And which just comes natural. I've never on her. There's a few times that we talk about, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And she has answers for it, but it's never, yelling or getting on to her about bad plays or whatever. But I just want to be a parent and be supportive, and that's what I've always looked at it as. And it's just been great for both of our girls. Ken, thank you so much for spending so much time with me right before you play. Are you going to the driving range? Is today a pro-am? What's going on today? Well, today was a travel day, so I'm just up and going to rest some, just catch up on some emails and phone calls and stuff I need to make. But that's the point of it. I have two pro-ams this week on Wednesday and Thursday, so I'm going to take off the next 2 days and go at it on Wednesday, Thursday. Then we start playing on Friday, Saturday, Sunday again. Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. All the best to you. No problem. Anytime. Thank you so much. More information about Ken in the show notes. You can find those wherever you listen. If you're on a podcast app, usually after the show title, you can scroll down and find those links. If not, you can always head on over to diabetes-connections.com. I'm in the process of building out the website for this show.
If you're listening as this episode is airing for the first time in November, this is a limited launch, so we haven't built the website yet, but it is coming. But right now you can find everything you need at diabetes-connections.com. Also, a bit of housekeeping. Ken Duke has a relationship with Abbott. That's the maker of Freestyle Libre. He's not doing any current promotion for them, but he has appeared in their advertisements and some videos in the past. Important for you to know that. I am big, you will find, on disclosures, and I really try to be upfront about sponsorship and advertising. And before I let you go, just a little bit more about me, if you are new around here, and I hope a lot of you are. My son was diagnosed with type 1 back in 2006, just before he turned 2. He is now almost 19 years old. And I was working in radio news. I hosted a morning show at the time. And I started the podcast in 2015 after I left that job because I wanted to find an informational, like a news-focused show about type 1. There wasn't one at the time, and I've been doing that ever since. I also am the author of the World's Worst Diabetes Mom book series, which is a parenting series, obviously, all about raising a child with type 1 diabetes. It's a humorous book, part memoir, part advice column, and lots of stories about being safe and happy with type 1, but not trying to go for perfect, which is a big theme around all of the stuff that I do. Perfection is definitely not an option. And then finally, this year we started Mom's Night Out, which is a new event for moms of kids with diabetes. We've had 3 of these in different cities in 2023. We will have 4 locations in 2024. If you'd like to learn more, head over to diabetes-connections.com and click on the events tab or the Mom's Night Out logo. So basically, I'm busy, but I'm really thrilled to be. I'm excited about all of these projects, and I am so glad you found Diabetes Connections Type 2. Lots more to come. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And thank you so much for listening. You can always let me know what you'd like to hear. Give me your feedback. I'm easy to find. My email is stacy@diabetes-connections.com. That is STACEY, diabetes-connections.com. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacy Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
I started drinking AG1 about a year and a half ago. I had heard about it on another podcast, and my husband wanted to try it too, so we ordered it. It's great. It replaces your multivitamin, probiotic, and more in one simple, drinkable habit. Slade, my husband, just puts it in water. He likes it that way, and he drinks it almost every morning. I prefer to mix it into something else. My favorite is to put it in a smoothie, and then I do not have to think about my vitamins for that day. Through a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients, AG1 delivers comprehensive support for the brain, gut, and immune system. I also like that AG1 is delivered monthly, so I don't have to think about it. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Stacy. That's drinkag1.com/STACEY. Check it out.